The Eternal Dawn was old. Everyone knew it. The ship had served Earth for 40 years, and now it floated through the empty darkness of space on a simple patrol mission. Nothing exciting ever happened on patrol. At least, that was what Captain Park Dolhume believed when he woke up that morning. Park was 52 years old. His hair had turned gray long ago, and deep lines marked his face. He had fought in 3 wars and buried too many friends. Now he commanded a forgotten ship with a tired crew, watching empty space day after day. The Galactic Confederacy considered humans a minor species. They were too young, too weak, and too primitive to matter. Earth's small fleet was a joke to the great alien empires. Park did not care what aliens thought. He cared about his crew and his mission. Nothing more. Lieutenant Kim Yuna stood at the tactical station, her eyes fixed on the screens. She was 31, with sharp eyes and quick hands. Years ago, she had made a mistake during a battle. People died because of her. She never forgot it. She never forgave herself. Now she checked every reading twice, sometimes 3 times. She would not fail again. In the engine room, Beek Son-ho cursed at a broken pipe. He was the ship's engineer, a stubborn man of 45 who refused to let the Eternal Dawn die. The ship was falling apart. The Beak held it together with old parts, creative repairs, and pure stubbornness. He talked to the engines like they were his children. Some crew members thought he was crazy. Maybe he was. But the ship kept running. The distress signal came at 0347 hours. Yuna saw it first. Her body went stiff, and she called out to the captain. Park walked to her station and looked at the data. A Confederacy diplomatic convoy was under attack near the void expanse. The attackers were Viaran. Park felt his stomach turn cold. The Viaran Dominion was feared across the galaxy. They had conquered 12 star systems in 10 years. Their ships were fast and deadly. Their warriors knew no mercy. When the Viaran attacked, people died. It was that simple. Park opened a channel to the convoy. The response was chaos. Screaming voices, explosions, desperate pleas for help. He could hear aliens dying in real time. How many Viaran ships? Park asked. Yuna checked her readings. 17 destroyers, sir. The convoy has 6 transport ships and 2 light escorts. The escorts already destroyed. 17 against 1 old patrol ship. The math was clear. If Park tried to help, he would die. His crew would die. The smart thing was to retreat and report to Earth Command. No one would blame him. Orders were orders. Park looked around his bridge. He saw young faces filled with fear. He saw old faces filled with resignation. These were his people. They trusted him to keep them alive. He thought about the convoy. Thousands of beings trapped on those transport ships. Diplomats, civilians, children probably. They would all die screaming while the Viaran laughed. Park had followed orders his whole life. He had watched good people die while he did the smart thing. He was tired of being smart. Set course for the convoy, he said quietly. Yuna turned to stare at him. Sir, that's 17 destroyers. We have 1 ship. 1 old ship. I can count, Lieutenant. We'll die. Park smiled. It was not a happy smile. Maybe. But they'll know we were here. He activated the ship-wide communication system. His voice echoed through every corridor, every room, every corner of the Eternal Dawn. All hands, this is the captain. We have received a distress call from a Confederacy convoy under Viaran attack. Command would tell us to run. Command would tell us that we cannot win. Command is probably right. He paused. But I am not going to watch innocent people die while I do nothing. I am going to fight. Anyone who wants to leave can take the escape pods. No one will think less of you. For everyone else, battle stations. We show these Viaran what humans are made of. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Beak's voice crackled over the cum from the engine room. "Captain, I'm giving you everything the old girl has. Let's make some noise." One by one, the crew responded. No one went to the escape pods. Every single person chose to stay and fight. Yuna felt something strange in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. Pride. She was proud of these crazy, foolish, brave humans. "Course plotted," she reported. "We'll reach the convoy in 7 minutes." Park nodded. "Charge all weapons. Raise shields to maximum. And someone find me some good music. If we're going to die, we're going to die with style." Someone laughed. Then someone else. Soon the whole bridge was laughing. It was absurd. It was insane. They were flying toward certain death, and they were laughing. The Eternal Dawn turned toward the battle. Its old engines roared with new purpose. Lights flickered as power flowed to weapons that had not been fired in years. Somewhere ahead, 17 VRN destroyers were killing helpless civilians. They did not know that death was coming for them. They did not know that a single human ship had decided to do the impossible. Captain Park Do-hyun sat in his command chair and watched the stars blur past. He thought about his wife back on Earth. He thought about his daughter, who had just had her first child. He might never see them again, but he would see the Viran, and he would make them remember. This day, the Eternal Dawn raced toward destiny, carrying 63 humans who had chosen to be heroes. The Viran were enjoying themselves. Admiral Gorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the convoy burn. He had conquered many worlds and killed many enemies. This attack was simple, easy. The Confederacy ships were weak, and their crews were weaker. They begged for mercy before they died. Gorath had never lost a battle. He did not intend to start today. His sensors officer made a confused sound. "Admiral, we detect another ship approaching." "One ship. It appears to be human." Gorath laughed. Humans were nothing. Small creatures from a small planet with small dreams. Their technology was old. Their fleet was tiny. They were not worth his attention. "Destroy it," he said casually. Then, we finished the convoy. 3 Vion destroyers broke formation and moved to intercept the human ship. It should have taken 30 seconds. Instead, everything changed. The Eternal Dawn did not slow down. It did not try to maintain distance like normal ships did. It accelerated directly toward the Vion destroyers at full speed. Ensign Chomina sat at the weapons station, her hand shaking slightly. She was 24 years old and had never fired a weapon at a real enemy. Now she was targeting warships that could destroy her with a single shot. "Fire pattern Delta," Yuna ordered. "All batteries, continuous fire." Mina pressed the controls. The Eternal Dawn lit up like a star. Every weapon on the ship fired at once, creating a wall of energy that filled space with death. It was not accurate. It was not elegant. It was overwhelming. The Varan destroyers had never seen anything like it. Their shields held against precise strikes, but this was different. Hundreds of shots hammered their defenses from every angle. Warning alarms screamed on their bridges. Before they could adjust, the human ship was among them. Captain Park gripped his chair as the Eternal Dawn flew between 2 destroyers, so close that their shields touched. At this range, even old weapons hit hard. "Rotate the ship," Park commanded. "Spread the damage across all hull sections." The Eternal Dawn spun as it fought, presenting fresh armor to enemy fire while its damaged sections faced away. It was a dangerous maneuver. One mistake would kill them all. But Engineer Beak had trained for this moment his entire life. In the engine room, Beak worked like a man possessed. Power lines burst and he rerouted them. Cooling systems failed and he bypassed them. The ship screamed in protest, but he kept it alive through sheer will. "Come on, old girl," he whispered. "Don't die on me now." The first Viarn destroyer exploded. Then the second. The third tried to retreat, but Mina tracked it with cold precision and tore it apart. On the Viarn flagship, Admiral Gorath stopped smiling. "What is happening?" he demanded. His officers had no answers. They watched in shock as the human ship engaged 3 more destroyers. It was damaged now. Fire burned along its hull. Atmosphere vented from a dozen breaches. Any normal ship would retreat. The humans kept fighting. Dr. Han Ji-woo moved through the ship's corridors, treating wounded crew members. She was 38, with steady hands and a calm voice. Around her, the ship shook with impacts. Smoke filled the air. People screamed in pain. She did not panic. She never panicked. There was no time for fear when people needed her help. A young crewman grabbed her arm. Half his face was burned. "Doctor, are we going to die?" Ji-woo smiled gently. "Not today. Now hold still." On the bridge, Yuna executed a maneuver she had invented years ago during a simulation. She called it the Soul Shuffle. The Eternal Dawn dove toward a nearby moon, using its gravity to slingshot around at incredible speed. As they moved, they released debris from damaged sections. The debris became a cloud of chaff that confused Viren sensors. When the Eternal Dawn emerged from behind the moon, it appeared directly behind Admiral Gorath's flagship. "All remaining power to forward weapons," Park ordered. Beak's voice came over the comm, strained but determined. "Captain, if I do that, we lose life support." Park did not hesitate. "Do it. We can breathe when we're dead." The lights on the ship went dark. The air grew thin, but the weapons glowed with terrible power. The Eternal Dawn fired everything it had into the Viren flagship's engines. The massive warship shuddered and began to drift, crippled but not destroyed. Admiral Gorath felt true fear for the first time in his life. These humans were insane. They sacrificed everything for victory. They did not fight like civilized beings. They fought like animals, like monsters. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel," he screamed, but it was too late. The Eternal Dawn had already changed course. It was no longer fighting at range. It was heading directly for Gorath's flagship at ramming speed. Park watched the enemy ship grow larger on his screen. Around him, his crew was silent. They knew what he was planning. "Brace for impact," he said calmly. The Eternal Dawn struck the Viren flagship like a spear. Metal screamed as the human ship buried itself deep into the enemy's hull. Both vessels locked together, spinning slowly in the void. Gorath stared at his screens in disbelief. The humans had rammed him. They had actually rammed him. Such tactics had not been used in centuries. They were primitive. They were barbaric. They were terrifying. On the Eternal Dawn, Captain Park stood up from his chair. Blood ran down his face from a wound on his forehead. Around him, his crew pulled themselves from the wreckage. "Marines to the airlocks," he ordered. "We're going aboard." Sergeant Lee Taiwan had waited his whole career for a real fight. Now he stood at the airlock with 11 Marines behind him, ready to board an enemy warship. It was suicide. The Viren were bigger, stronger, and there were hundreds of them on that ship. Taiwan did not care. He was 40 years old and built like a wall. His face was scarred from old battles. His eyes were cold and hard. He had trained his Marines for this moment. "Listen up," he said quietly. "The Viren think they're warriors. They think they know how to fight. They're wrong. We're going to show them what human soldiers do. Stay close. Move fast. Kill everything that isn't us." Private Song Yoonji checked her weapon one more time. She was 19, the youngest Marine on the ship. Her hands were steady, but her heart was pounding. This was her first real combat. She might die in the next few minutes. She thought about her mother. Back on Earth. She thought about the little apartment where she grew up. She thought about all the things she still wanted to do. Then she pushed those thoughts away. There was no room for fear. Only the mission. The airlock opened. The Marines poured into the VRN flagship like water through a broken dam. They moved in tight formation, covering each other, checking every corner. The corridors were dark and filled with smoke. Red emergency lights cast strange shadows. The first VRN appeared from a side passage. He was nearly 3 meters tall, with gray skin and 4 arms. Each arm held a weapon. He roared and charged at the humans. Taiwan shot him in the face. The VRN dropped. "Keep moving," the sergeant ordered. More VRN came. They were fierce and strong, but the humans fought in ways they had never seen. Taiwan's Marines used flashbang grenades that blinded enemies with light and sound. The VRN screamed and stumbled, unable to fight back. By Confederacy standards, such weapons were illegal. Humans did not care about Confederacy standards. Unji found herself face to face with a VAR warrior twice her size. He grabbed her with 2 arms and lifted her off the ground. She could feel bones starting to crack under his grip. She did not scream. She did not beg. Instead, she pulled a knife from her belt and stabbed it into the VRN's eye. The alien dropped her and staggered back, howling in pain. Yunji hit the ground, rolled, and shot him 3 times before he fell. Taiwan appeared beside her. "Good work, Private." They moved deeper into the ship. In the convoy, survivors watched the battle through damaged sensors. Ambassador Yeltris was among them. He was an old alien with blue skin and 6 eyes, a diplomat who had served the Confederacy for 200 years. He had seen many things. He had never seen anything like this. The human ship had rammed the VRN flagship. Now human soldiers were fighting their way through enemy corridors. It was impossible. It was insane. It was happening. What are these creatures? Yeltris whispered. No one could answer him. On the VRN ship, the Marines reached the detention level. Taiwan kicked open a door and found a cell full of prisoners. They were Confederacy diplomats, captured during the attack. Among them was a young female alien who stared at the humans with wide, terrified eyes. "We're here to rescue you," Taiwan said. "Stay behind us and don't make noise." The prisoners followed the Marines through the ship. They saw human soldiers doing things that should not be possible. They saw a Marine tackle a VRN and beat him to death with bare hands. They saw another Marine keep fighting with a wound that should have killed her. They saw humans laugh in the middle of combat, making jokes while they killed their enemies. Ambassador Yeltris, who had been moved to this ship before the attack, walked among the prisoners. He watched a young human woman, barely more than a child, fight like a demon from old legends. She was covered in blood, most of it not her own. She moved with speed and violence that made his heart pound with fear. These were not the weak, primitive humans the Confederacy had dismissed. These were something else entirely. Apex predators. That was the term that came to his mind. Humans were apex predators who had learned to build starships. The Marines reached the bridge level. VRN guards had formed a defensive line to protect Admiral Gorath. There were 30 of them, armed with heavy weapons. Taiwan studied the situation for 3 seconds. Then he nodded to his team. The humans attacked without warning. They threw grenades, smoke bombs, and themselves at the enemy line. The corridor became chaos. Aliens and humans fought hand to hand, bodies crashing together in the darkness. Unji felt something hit her shoulder. Pain exploded through her body. She ignored it. She kept shooting. She kept moving. She kept fighting. When the smoke cleared, 27 VRN were dead. 3 Marines were wounded. None were killed. Taiwan approached the bridge door. It was locked, sealed with heavy metal barriers. He placed explosives around the frame and stepped back. The door exploded inward. Captain Park Do-yoon stepped through the smoking hole. He was wounded. Blood soaked his uniform. One arm hung useless at his side, but he walked with his head high and his eyes burning. Admiral Gorath stood in the center of his bridge, surrounded by his officers. He held a weapon in each of his 4 hands. He was ready to fight to the death. Park stopped a few meters away from him. The 2 commanders stared at each other. "You have fought well, human," Gorath said slowly. "Better than any enemy I have faced. But you are dying. Your ship is destroyed. You cannot win." Park smiled. It was the smile of a man who had already accepted death. "Maybe," he said, "but you're going to remember this day forever. You're going to remember that one old human ship made the mighty Varm bleed. And you're going to wonder what happens when we send a real fleet." He raised his weapon and pointed it at Gorath's head. "Now, surrender or die. Your choice." Admiral Gorath looked at the human standing before him. Park was small. He was wounded. He should have been dead 10 times over. Yet here he stood, weapon raised, eyes burning with something Gorath did not understand. The VRN Admiral had conquered worlds. He had destroyed fleets. He had never surrendered in his life. He dropped his weapons. "I yield," he said quietly. The words tasted like poison in his mouth. Park did not smile. He did not celebrate. He simply nodded and lowered his weapon. Smart choice. Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread like fire. Within hours, every species in the Confederacy knew what had happened. A single human patrol ship had defeated 17 VRN destroyers. A human captain had captured Admiral Gorath alive. For the first time in VRN history, a flag officer had surrendered to an enemy. The footage was everywhere. Ships had recorded everything. People watched humans laughing during combat. They watched the Eternal Dawn ram the flagship. They watched human marines fight through corridors filled with enemies. They watched, and they could not believe what they were seeing. High Counselor Vex sat in his chamber on the Confederacy homeworld. He was ancient, even by his species' long standards. His body was thin and fragile, but his mind was sharp as a blade. He had ruled the Confederacy for 300 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had never seen anything like humans. His advisors stood before him, arguing about what to do. "They are dangerous," one said. "We should quarantine their system. Keep them contained before they become a threat." "They saved our convoy," another argued. "We should welcome them. Make them allies before someone else does." "They are insane," a third added. "Did you see how they fight? They rammed an enemy ship. They boarded it. They laughed while people died. These are not civilized beings." Vex raised a hand for silence. He studied the tactical data from the battle. Numbers and patterns filled his screens. He saw things that his advisors had missed. "Look closely," he said softly. The Eternal Dawn was not a warship. It was a patrol vessel. Old technology. Skeleton crew. Minimum weapons. He paused. If this is what humans do when they are unprepared, imagine what they do when they are ready. The chamber fell silent. On the crippled Eternal Dawn, Dr. Han Ji-woo worked without rest. The medical bay was overflowing with wounded. She had run out of proper supplies hours ago. She was using emergency equipment, improvised tools, anything she could find. Captain Park lay on a table, barely conscious. His wounds were severe. He had lost too much blood. His body was failing. "Stay with me, Captain," Ji-woo said firmly. "You don't get to die." "Not today." Park opened his eyes slightly. "How bad?" Ji-woo did not lie. "Bad, but I've seen worse. And I'm very good at my job." Park almost smiled. The crew? Alive, most of them. We lost 7 people. Her voice was steady, but her eyes showed the pain. 7 dead. 7 families that would never see their loved ones again. Too many, Park whispered. Yes, but you saved thousands. The convoy is safe. Gorath is captured. The Viaran fleet retreated. Jiwoo put a hand on his shoulder. You did something impossible, Captain. Now let me do the same. She worked through the night. She refused to let him die. Across space, Admiral Yoon Hana received the news on her flagship. She was Earth's fleet commander, the highest-ranking officer in human service. She was 58 years old, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much death. Park Do-yoon had served under her command 20 years ago. She remembered him as a young lieutenant, eager and idealistic. Now he was a hero. Prepare the fleet, she ordered. We're going to bring our people home. 20 human warships left Earth orbit. They were not patrol vessels. They were real warships, built for real combat. They carried the best weapons, the best crews, the best technology humanity could create. When they arrived at the battle site, the surviving Viaran ships fled without fighting. They had seen what one old human ship could do. They did not want to face 20 modern ones. Captain Kan Ji-hoon commanded the rescue fleet's lead ship. He was 42, tall and handsome, and had been Park's student at the academy. He docked with the Eternal Dawn and walked through its damaged corridors. The ship was dying. Fire still burned in some sections. Bodies lay where they had fallen. Blood covered the floors. Yet everywhere Ji-hoon looked, he saw signs of impossible courage. Repair patches on critical systems. Makeshift barricades. Messages written on walls. Jokes and encouragement from crew members who knew they might die. He found Lieutenant Kim Yuna on the bridge. She had taken command after Park was wounded. She had not slept in 2 days. Her eyes were red and exhausted, but she stood straight and saluted when Ji-hoon entered. "Welcome aboard, sir," she said. Her voice did not shake. Ji-hoon returned the salute with deep respect. "Lieutenant, you and your crew have done something extraordinary." Yuna shook her head slowly. "We just did our job, sir." The captain made the choice. We followed. In the Confederacy chambers, debate raged for days. Species argued about what to do with humanity. Some wanted war. Some wanted alliance. Some wanted to pretend this had never happened. Then the Viran Dominion made everything simple. They announced that humanity was a threat to galactic peace. They declared that Earth must be destroyed before humans became too powerful. They began assembling the largest fleet in their history, 300 warships. Enough to burn a planet to ash. High. Counselor Vex watched the VRN preparations with ancient eyes. He understood what was happening. The VRN were afraid. They had seen what one human ship could do, and they were terrified of what might come next. Fear makes people do stupid things. It makes them do evil things. Vex did not know if he should help humanity. He did not know if it was possible to help humanity. But he knew one thing with certainty, that the universe was about to change forever. 300 Vion warships crossed into human space. They came to destroy everything. They came to end humanity forever. They expected easy victory. They were wrong. Admiral Yoon Hana stood on the bridge of her flagship, the unconquered sun. Around her, 60 human warships formed a defensive line at the edge of the solar system. They were outnumbered 5-1. By any reasonable calculation, they should surrender or run. Hana had never been reasonable. She opened a communication channel to the entire galaxy. Every species, every world, every ship that could receive signals heard her voice. "This is Admiral Yoon Hana of the Earth Defense Fleet. The Viaran Dominion has come to destroy my species. They think we are weak. They think we are primitive. They think we will break, She paused. They are wrong. You wanted to see what humans do when we are ready? Watch. The Battle of the Crimson Boundary began. Human ships did not fight like other species. They did not maintain safe distances. They did not follow predictable patterns. They attacked in swarms, breaking formation and reforming in seconds. They used tactics that no galactic military had ever seen. Drone swarms filled space with thousands of small, fast weapons. They targeted Vion sensors, blinding their ships. Electronic warfare systems broadcast false signals, making the enemy see threats that did not exist. Human ships coordinated with perfect timing, striking weak points with devastating precision. The Viren had more ships. The humans had more creativity. On the unconquered sun, Hana directed the battle with cold efficiency. She watched her ships fight and die. She sent young men and women into certain death. Every loss cut her heart like a knife. But she did not hesitate. She could not afford to hesitate. A damaged human cruiser drifted toward a group of Viren destroyers. Its engines were dead. Its weapons were destroyed. Any normal crew would abandon ship. The human crew voted to stay. They overloaded their reactor and flew directly into the enemy formation. The explosion destroyed 3 Viren ships. 50 humans died so that 300 enemies would die with them. Across the fleet, similar sacrifices happened again and again. Damaged ships became weapons. Wounded crews kept fighting. Medics treated injured soldiers, while enemy fire shook their ships. Engineers performed impossible repairs in the middle of combat. The Viren had never faced anything like this. Their warriors were brave, but they fought to win. Humans fought like they had already accepted death. There was no way to frighten people who were not afraid to die. Captain Park Da-yun should not have been there. Dr. Han Ji-woo had forbidden him from leaving medical care. His wounds were barely healed. His body was weak. He could barely walk. He walked anyway. The Eternal Dawn had been repaired just enough to fly. It was held together with patches and prayers. Its crew was half the normal size. It should have stayed far from Battle. Park brought it to the front line. Captain, Lieutenant Kim Yuna said quietly, "You shouldn't be here." Park settled into his command chair. Around him, his crew watched with respect and love. These people had followed him into hell. They would follow him again. "I started this," Park said. "I'm going to finish it." The Eternal Dawn joined the battle. It was the oldest ship in the fleet, the weakest and slowest. But when the crew of the Unconquered Sun saw it arrive, they cheered. Word spread through the human fleet. The Eternal Dawn was fighting. The ship that had started everything was still alive. Morale soared. Humans fought harder. Vion started to retreat. Admiral Garath watched the battle from a prison cell on the Unconquered Sun. Guards had allowed him to see what was happening. They wanted him to witness his fleet's defeat. He watched human ships sacrifice themselves to destroy his people. He watched crews laugh and sing while they fought. He watched the impossible become real. "What are you?" he whispered. One of his guards, a young human soldier, heard the question. He smiled grimly. "We're humans," he said. "We don't know how to quit." The Viren fleet broke. It did not happen slowly. One moment they were fighting, and the next they were running. 300 warships fled from 60. They had lost over 100 ships. They had failed to destroy a single human world. They had tried to kill humanity. Instead, they had awakened it. In the aftermath, the Galactic Confederacy granted humanity a permanent seat on the High Council. High Counselor Vex delivered the announcement personally. "We underestimated you," he said to Admiral Hana. "We will not make that mistake again." It was not respect. It was fear. But Hana accepted it anyway. Fear would keep her people safe until respect could grow. Captain Park Do-yun, retired as the most decorated officer in human history. The Eternal Dawn was preserved as a museum ship, its hull still bearing the scars of impossible victories. Millions of people visited it every year. They walked through its corridors and touched its walls. They tried to understand how 63 people had changed the universe. Lieutenant Kim Yuna received her own command. She named her new ship the Park Do-Yan, after the man who had taught her that courage matters more than odds. Engineer Baek Sun-ho finally got new parts for his engines. He complained that they were too fancy and spent weeks making them work. Like the old ones. Dr. Han Ji-woo opened a hospital on Earth. She trained a new generation of combat medics who could save lives while the world burned around them. Sergeant Lee Taiwan and Private Song Eun-ji became legends among Marine forces. Their tactics were studied at every military academy in the Confederacy. Ambassador Yeltras wrote a report that became required reading across the galaxy. The final paragraph said everything that needed to be said. Do not mistake human kindness for weakness. Do not mistake their chaos for incompetence. Do not mistake their small numbers for vulnerability. They are not a young species finding their way among the stars. They are wolves who learn patience. The universe is not ready for what humanity will become. But ready or not, they are here. On Earth, in a small city called Seoul, a young girl sat on her roof and looked up at the stars. She was 7 years old. Her name was Park Subin. Captain Park Do-hyun was her grandfather. She dreamed of flying through space. She dreamed of adventure and discovery. She dreamed of making her grandfather proud. Somewhere out there, the galaxy waited. Ancient empires, unknown wonders, endless possibilities. Humanity was just getting started, and the universe would never be the same.